Hey guys! So Nintendo just announced their brand new console, the Switch 2, and I have some thoughts. In this video, I'll go over what I think it means for cozy gaming, what I like and what I don't, and also which games I'm most looking forward to. So a few days ago, Nintendo announced their new console, the Switch 2, releasing on June 5th of this year. It'll be priced at $449 USD, not including tax, which is pretty steep in my opinion, but we'll talk more about that as well as the hardware changes and design changes they're making to the original Switch design. With the console, they're also releasing a new Mario Kart game, Mario Kart World, which has an open world component, which is interesting. Basically, there's a normal racing mode like any other Mario Kart game with some pretty cool looking tracks, but there's also a mode where you can just kind of drive around and explore. The racing mode also has up to 24 competitors, which I think could make for some pretty fun and chaotic races. To me, the open world component is kind of confusing, but we'll definitely see how it goes when the game is released. Most open world games have quests or collectibles for you to discover as you explore, and I'm just wondering how that will fit in with Mario Kart. I can't tell from the trailer if there's going to be things like that, or if it's more just to hang out and explore the maps they've created. So I'll be kind of watching for that because I'm interested to see if there are kind of side challenges you can find or any collectibles like that. Okay, so in terms of the console itself, I wanted to first talk about what I see as the pros and then move towards the cons. First, they changed the way the controllers attach to the Switch, so now they use magnets instead of sliding in and clicking like the old Switch. This isn't really a major issue I had with the original Switch or anything, I just think the magnets are a pretty cool design. Next, they added a microphone to the console, and I really liked this idea, but I'm not a huge fan of how it's actually implemented. More on that in the cons. They made some general improvements to the hardware, including higher frame rate limits, higher resolution, and HDR capabilities for better graphics and contrast. They made it backwards compatible with the Switch so you can continue to play games you already own. This is definitely a pro, but also if they hadn't have done it, it would have been a huge red flag. And last, they're adding the ability for the Joy-Cons to be used as a mouse. I think that's pretty cool for competitive games. Even though I would never really play a competitive game on the Switch, I'd probably just play on the PC. There's also a game they announced releasing for Switch 2 that is 3v3 wheelchair basketball, and you play the game using both controllers as mice, almost like you're wheeling yourself. And I really like that idea. I don't know if I would necessarily play that game, but I like that they're kind of innovating with the game design in a way that reminds me of the older Wii games. Okay, now we're on to the cons. And first, it goes without saying, but the price. I'm not surprised by it. It was kind of what I was expecting, but it is pretty steep in my opinion. And it also doesn't really make much sense to me considering you can buy the LCD Steam Deck for much less and the OLED Steam Deck for about the same price. I feel like that's much better value for money because there are a lot cheaper games on Steam versus the Switch games that are $80 US, and there's just a bigger variety. Next, the exclusives coming on release aren't too interesting, at least in my opinion. These two exclusives that they announced were the Mario Kart World game and a new Donkey Kong game. I'm not super interested in these, but even if I was, I would have to be very interested to want to buy the console just for these games. There were some other cool games that were mentioned in the announcement, but these aren't exclusive, so they're playable either on Switch or on PC or other platforms. So there's no need to get the Switch 2 just for those. The next con is some Switch games will be releasing Switch 2 versions, and you'll need to buy an upgrade pack to play that. For most of the games that they announced that will have this, the only improvements are really just graphics and frame rate, but Breath of the Wild is also getting some weird guidance feature called Zelda Notes. I wasn't able to find what the price would be for these upgrade packs, but for me, they would need to be less than $15 to even consider buying them, because I don't find a graphic improvement to be worth that much. Okay, now we'll talk about the microphone. Like I said, I thought it was really cool that they were adding a microphone, and I thought it could be good, especially for some competitive games that are on the Switch, like Overwatch or Fortnite. Unfortunately though, it seems that the microphone is only usable with a feature called Game Chat, which is a Nintendo feature that allows you to call friends and share your game with them. Basically, it's like Discord, but only for the Switch. On release, this feature will be free, but it will move to only be accessible if you have a Nintendo Online membership after March 2026. It's kind of crazy to me that the microphone is only usable with this game chat feature and will be completely useless in the future if you don't pay for the membership. I guess this isn't really too new since online features aren't available without the membership, but I just think it's kind of crazy to have a feature built into the hardware that you just can't use. I guess my only hope for this is that maybe they'll make some games that make use of the microphone as a mechanic in the game. Kind of like how on the DS there was Nintendogs where you could give commands to your dogs through the microphone, or Cooking Mama where you had to blow on it for certain recipes. I just really like those kinds of games that are kind of making use of the hardware to add new mechanics, and I feel like there hasn't been a lot of that in recent years. They're also selling a camera as an add-on to the Switch, which would be available for use when you're chatting with your friends in game chat. Again, this seems a little weird to me because it's only usable with that feature, and I would love if it was incorporated into game mechanics. I fully forgot to talk about something else, which is that they're releasing a game called The Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which is basically just a demo or explanation of all the features that the console will have, except they're releasing it as a paid game. I don't know the price they're asking for it because they didn't mention it in the announcement, but that's insane. So overall for me, I don't think I'll buy this console, and I think a Steam Deck is just a much better deal, at least for the kind of games that I play. That might change if new exclusives come to the console, specifically if there's a new Animal Crossing or mainline Pokemon game that's an exclusive, but even then I'm not 100% sold. But even if I'm not rushing out to buy this new console, I am excited about some of the cozy games that were featured in the announcement. Here's a quick list of the cozy games they announced in the Nintendo Direct announcement. Here's a quick list of the cozy games that were mentioned in the announcement coming to the Switch 2. Split Fiction by the same studio that made It Takes Two. Pokemon Legends ZA, the sequel to Pokemon Legends Arceus. Deltarune, the follow-up to Undertale. Hollow Knight Silksong, the sequel to Hollow Knight. Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar. Survival Kids. 2 Point Museum. Witchbrook. Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma. Professor Layton in the New World of Steam, which I mentioned in the video where I talked about my most anticipated games of 2025, Tamagotchi Plaza, and then Kirby Air Riders and Mario Kart World. But keep in mind that all of these games will be available on other platforms with the exception of Mario Kart World and maybe Kirby Air Riders. So it's not like you have to buy the new Switch for these. But if you were going to buy it anyway, then it's good to know that these are going to be available. Alright, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to share my thoughts on the announcement and highlight some of the cozy games that were mentioned. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really curious if people are thinking they'll buy the new console or not. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!